Now imagine with me, somewhere far away, among tribes still living the exact way their ancestors did, someone waking up with the sunrise. No alarm clock, no WhatsApp messages waiting for them, just the sound of the camp slowly waking up around them. This person, and millions like them, lived this way for over 300,000 years. Before phones, before work schedules, even before agriculture itself. And strangely enough, studies say ancient humans only worked about 2 to 3 hours a day. You probably work more than that before you've even had breakfast. So what did they do with the rest of their time? Here's what we know now. The first thing they did after waking up wasn't eating or working. It was talking. In one study on desert tribes, researchers found people spent long hours every day just talking to each other. But this wasn't ordinary chit-chat. It was the camp's entire operating system. Who slept? Who woke up? Who took more than their share yesterday? Who made someone laugh? Who had something happen to them and stayed silent? This talk was a complete substitute for any legal system we have today. If someone came up short in distributing meat, people talked about it and mocked him until he corrected his mistake. If a woman broke a promise, word reached neighboring camps within a single day. And if you mistreated someone, tomorrow no one would love you. No camp would agree to take you in. That alone was enough to make everyone hold themselves accountable. There's a story a researcher who spent years living with one of these tribes recalls. During one of their festivals, he decided to gift them the biggest, fattest animal he could find to make them happy. But instead of thanking him, they spent an entire week mocking his gift, telling him the meat was bad and the animal was scrawny, even though he was certain it was excellent. Until he asked one of the elders, "Why are you doing this?" The elder replied, "If someone brings back a big catch, we don't praise him, we mock him. Why? So he doesn't feel he's better than the rest." They treated him exactly the way they treated any successful hunter, but the researcher didn't know this custom yet. Mid-morning, the men would head out to hunt, but hunting was never guaranteed. Most days they came back empty-handed. Sometimes they'd walk long distances, tracking a wounded animal for hours, only to lose it in the end. But when they succeeded, the catch was worth the effort. They had poisoned arrows, made from venom extracted from a desert plant, potent enough to bring down a large animal after hours of tracking. But what people often don't expect is that the men weren't the ones feeding the camp. Most days, it was the women who provided most of the food. They'd go out in groups, digging and gathering plants, roots and fruits, coming back with a steady, reliable food supply that didn't depend on luck. And oddly enough, the woman who most often came back with the most food was usually the grandmother. Women in their 50s and 60s gathered more food than women in their 20s. This is one of the reasons scientists believe human women live many years after menopause, unlike most mammals, because having a grandmother around increased the survival chances of her grandchildren. As for the children, they had no schools, no classrooms, no homework. A 3-year-old would play in the dirt next to her mother. By 6, she could gather food on her own, and by 8, a boy would head out with his bow and come back with a small bird. Everything they learned came through observation, imitation, and play, not books or notebooks. At noon, the first food would return to camp and be distributed immediately. Distribution wasn't optional, it was law. If someone hunted a large animal, it wasn't considered his property. He had to share it with everyone, and sometimes he himself took the worst cut. This system is what built social thinking in humans. who gave, who fell short, who stood by others in times of need. In the afternoon, after eating, the camp would settle down. Midday was hot, so no one worked during it. People slept, sat in the shade, repaired their tools, wove baskets, and even picked lice from each other's hair. Oddly, this last one was more about bonding than hygiene. It was a time for rest, conversation, and strengthening relationships, not a time for work.
And of course, they weren't angels. There was jealousy, disputes, and problems among them, just like any humans. But the way they resolved them was completely different from today. In a society where you could pack up all your belongings in 15 minutes and walk to another camp, many problems ended simply by someone wanting distance for a while. Researchers call it voting with your feet. If you couldn't get along with someone, you'd go somewhere else for a few days or a week, and by the time you came back, the anger would be gone. Today, we have a house, a loan, a job, and obligations. It's not easy to just get up and leave. Late afternoon, before sunset, people would start visiting other camps, exchanging news, chatting, and sometimes arranging marriages between tribes. Over the years, each person would come to personally know more than 100 people, knowing their names, their stories, and who they could rely on in times of need. Hunters would return, some with a catch, but often the majority returned with nothing. Meanwhile, the women who spent their day gathering food were the true heroes of the day, but without any celebration, without anyone praising them. In the evening, the fire would be lit. Roots roasted on the embers, meat cooked on hot stones, and fruit was shared among everyone. Then came the last meal of the day, and the whole camp would sit together, elders and children, everyone. They did this every single night for more than 300,000 years. But don't imagine their life was paradise. They got sick, lost children, said goodbye to loved ones, argued and grieved, just like any human who's ever lived on this earth. But there was a kind of exhaustion they likely never knew, the exhaustion we live with today. The fatigue of work we don't love, done just to pay endless bills, spending hours comparing our lives to people we don't even know. In the 1960s, one researcher described ancient humans as the original affluent society. Not because they were rich in money. On the contrary, they had almost no possessions. But they were rich in something else: time. Of course, we've gained things they never dreamed of: vaccines, antibiotics, hospitals, clean water, sanitation, longer lifespans, and children who survive far more often. No one would truly wish to go back and live their life. But along the way, we lost some things too. We invented agriculture, then we invented jobs, bosses, bills, and work hours. But your body, to this day, is the same body that lived for millions of days this way. The same brain, the same nervous system, the same need for sunlight, sleep, sitting with people, conversation, and time with nothing urgent demanding it. Our lives may have changed completely, but inside every one of us, there's still a small part living on like a gatherer and a hunter. And finally, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because we have many more videos coming about human history and strange things you've probably never heard before. See you in the next video.